that our newly independent states would create the environment for their citizens to thrive. You heard how, even in East Africa, they wanted from day one to form a federation right from the onset. And for a time, we lived the dream and savored the early wins of being our own masters. However, unfortunately, over time, instead of dismantling the colonial legacy, we inherited it and customized it even further to create a new African style of leadership. A style that leaned heavily on patronage, ethnic and religious mobilization, elitism and favoritism, the result of which was a quick deterioration in national cohesion, the entrenchment of corruption as an evil that led to the stagnation of our economies. There's a story President Museveni likes to tell of a leader, I don't like mentioning names, but one of our forefathers, who, when being questioned as to why he didn't want this federation to proceed, couldn't give a good explanation. But another Ugandan parliamentarian challenged him and said, the problem is that you want to be a big fish in a little pond so that you can sit on all the other little fish. And unfortunately, that was the mentality that resulted in many a problem on this continent. These weaknesses exposed our underbellies and left us vulnerable once again to the whims of foreign powers. They have exposed these vulnerabilities in our political constructs to manipulate our development trajectory as Africans, and unfortunately, we are almost back to square one. This, however, is a story of years gone by. It does not have to be how our future will evolve. Now that you have an insight as to how we got here, I believe let us focus our attention on how to get out of this quandary that we find ourselves in. And we begin this by taking the first question: what does it mean today to be a young African in a world where developed nations are focused inward, prioritizing their national interests? Ladies and gentlemen, having served as president, I appreciate fully the pressure that elected leaders face on a daily basis. They have to be in tune with the mood and desires of their voting public and be seen to be directing the government's energies towards addressing these demands. Can we therefore really blame the governments of developed nations for responding to their needs, to the needs of their own citizens above all others? We can't. That is what they do. So us as well, it is time for us to also stop lamenting about the inward-looking policies of faraway democracies and nations. And we should instead be asking ourselves, why is it that we as Africans don't prioritize our own interests above all else? The duty of a responsible government is to discharge its primary mandate of serving the interests of its citizens. In many nations across Africa, we have somehow managed to invert the order of this relationship. Instead, the citizens are subservient to the government and are compelled to adjust their behavior in order to promote the interests of the state, which in many instances are almost indistinguishable from personal interests. So you, as young African leaders, you know well as I do that this situation is untenable. The economic opportunities you desire in order to live your best lives can only be created by governments that are designed to serve the citizens and not governments whose only reason for existence is to exploit, manipulate,